Yaps. It's in the name. What did India find on the moon? They had to find something.
There is a new gold
Did they find cheese?
rush happening on the moon. Nations from all over the Earth are racing to find one of the most valuable resources in the solar system.
Cheese.
Something that will allow people to build our first off-world colony. Out of all the many space programs and private companies that are competing for lunar resources, you might be surprised to learn that India has taken an early lead. They were the first to arrive on the most coveted piece of lunar real estate, and what they found or didn't find will have a major effect on how we colonize the moon.
Interesting. Did they not find
In
water?
2009,
Or did
India
they
made
find
their
water?
first major discovery on the moon with a mission called Chandrayaan. This was a lunar orbiter that observed the surface from space, and it was equipped with a very special instrument provided to the mission by NASA, the Moon Mineralogy Mapper, also known as M3. As Chandrayaan-1 circled the moon at an altitude of 200 kilometers, M3 was able to create this spherical map of the lunar surface. Each color represents a different mineral
David
content,
Geeky, I wish
but
you would
most
type that while we were
important
watching that
are
video.
the blue areas at the north and south poles. That tells us that M3 detected the presence of water and hydrated minerals called hydroxyls in these locations. This was the first real evidence ever collected that would confirm the moon does have large concentrations of water in its surface.
Wow.
When
Okay.
NASA astronauts
Called that.
collected samples of lunar
So there's lots of water on the surface, or maybe like frozen water, and then on the polar ends there's a concentration of buildup.
rock and soil back in the 1960s and 70s, scientists were able to find trace
Probably
amounts of
not
water.
sticks.
But when we say trace amounts, we mean very, very small amounts. At most, the Apollo samples returned about 200 micrograms of water per gram of lunar soil. A microgram is 1/1,000,000th of a gram. So to put that into perspective, to get just 1 kilogram or 1 liter of water, you would need to process at least 200 metric tons of moon soil, which
Damn.
would be about 15 dump trucks worth. Now, the
Damn.
reason why we're so interested in water on the moon is because someday we'd like to see people living up there for long periods of time. But in order to do that, they're going to need a lot of water to keep them alive.
Well, if it's
They'll
Moon
also
Knight, we need the
oxygen to
Egyptian
breathe
god
and
up there.
hydrogen to use as a fuel source, both of which can be extracted from water molecules. The vision for the future only works if we can find significantly higher concentrations of water in the lunar surface, and this map from Chandrayaan-1 tells us exactly where to look.
At the
That's
ends?
why all eyes have been locked on the south pole of the moon in this decade. NASA,
Interesting.
China, Russia, Europe, Japan, and India have all made it their priority to investigate the South Pole and find genuine evidence of water ice in this region. India was the first to arrive. In the summer of 2023, their
Hell
Chandrayaan-3
yeah.
mission deployed a lander named Vikram to the surface of the moon. It touched down in a region that the Indians have named Shakti Point, located about 600 kilometers from the South Pole on the moon's near side. If you are wondering what happened to Chandrayaan-2, it suffered a fate that has become all too common for moon landing attempts in the 21st century.
It
Just in the
landed too
past
hard?
decade, 2 American probes made by Intuitive Machines, 1 Russian Luna probe, and 2 Japanese
Shakti
moon
Point means
landers have
PowerPoint?
all crash landed on the moon.
Coming
So
in
it's
too
not
hot.
exactly surprising that in 2019, India's Chandrayaan-2 lander suffered a communication failure during its approach to the lunar surface and also ended up crashing. When you look at
What if it's the
history of
aliens sitting at an
space, one
EMP
thing
and then they
becomes
take our
obvious really
resources and
fast.
take our money?
Clutter is failure. Every object has to justify its mass, its volume, and its function. That's why I've been using Exter's Smart Wallet. It's about half the size of a traditional wallet, but it still holds over twice and upgrade what you carry every day and how you travel. Of all the potential landing sites on the moon,
They're not, on the moon, they may be
is the most
unemployed. You know, they may need our.
the
They may be
terrain
like
here is
scavenger
rough
hunters.
and uneven, filled with craters and hilltops. This is nothing like those endless flat plains where Apollo astronauts explored decades ago. The challenges of this environment are made even more difficult by the extremely low light from the sun. Because of the way the moon is tilted on its axis, the sun
No,
never
you're right. You're right.
actually
You're right. The
rises
moon is a
over the
portal
South
base.
Pole.
No, you're
It
so
only
right.
just peaks above the horizon like the first light of
But
day.
that's why they could just take it
This
and bring
ends
it through
up
the
casting
portal and
deep
then bring it back
shadows
to their
into all
homeland.
of those craters and valleys
Duh.
that obscure much of the surface in permanent darkness.
Ooh,
All
permanent
of
darkness.
this really just helps to reinforce how impressive it was that Chandrayaan-3's Vikram lander actually made it down safely and became the first mission to explore the surface of the moon's South Pole region. Of course, the primary objective for Vikram was to find water, but it actually
Well, the model and data were all done by NASA. NASA analyzed the data, and the module for water detected was made by them.
made one very interesting discovery.
Yeah, but by
along the
Indian
way.
technology.
It turns out that the moon is electric. The Indian probe found an
You're telling me it's electric. Boop, 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 boop.
unusually high density of charged particles moving across the surface of the moon. And as they move, the particles create tiny spikes of electrical energy, essentially sparks.
On the
The
ground?
electricity
The moon is sparking?
arrives on the moon from two sources. The big one
Can we
is
use that
our sun.
electricity?
During
Yeah,
the
we
2-week-long
have to
lunar
be able
day,
to, right?
The solar wind deposits charged particles on the surface that slowly accumulate. But a large amount of the electricity also comes from the Earth.
What's
Our
up,
planet
Armand?
has a
Namaste, bye.
magnetic field that blocks the solar wind from reaching the surface, which is what keeps us safe from cosmic radiation. Instead, all of the charged particles from the sun end up getting trapped in the Earth's magnetosphere and then released into space on the opposite side of the planet in this kind of tail shape. For about 5 days each month, the moon passes through the Earth's magnetotail
What are we watching? Well, India found some fascinating shit about the moon, so we're learning about it.
and ends up getting soaked in all of this concentrated radiation. The result is that the moon forms its own layer of electrically charged particles that extends about 100 kilometers above the surface and contributes to a very thin lunar atmosphere. It's only
Chandrayaan,
about
which is
1
the carrier,
trillionth
still.
the density of Earth's atmosphere.
They made the whip.
Very nearly a vacuum, but it is still there, and it is electric. The next major
that's what this
task of
video
the
is
Vikram
saying,
lander
Arma.
was to investigate underneath the surface of the moon. The Indians included a probe that would be deployed straight down into the lunar soil. Its objective
Indians be probing the moon? Okay.
was to measure changes in temperature up to 10 centimeters below the surface, and this is where they found something very unexpected.
Was it warmer
To
than the
begin with,
surface?
the temperature at the surface of the polar region was too hot, measuring 70 degrees Celsius when the team had been expecting to find a temperature of
That's
between
hot.
20 and 30 degrees.
Yeah.
But then, once they started measuring underground, there was an even bigger surprise. With each centimeter that the probe traveled, there was a dramatic loss of heat in the
Okay,
lunar
so I was
soil.
wrong. It's the
By
opposite.
the time they reached 10 centimeters of depth, the probe was showing a temperature of negative 10 degrees Celsius. That is
Negative
much
10.
colder than they expected to find.
Water is not in its natural form, though. It's trapped in ice caps. I think that's exactly what he's about to get to.
This tells us that the lunar soil, also called regolith, is an extremely effective insulator. Just a relatively thin layer can block an incredible amount of heat. And that confirms a long-standing theory that we can use regolith as a building material for a habitat on the moon that would be able to protect human beings from the intense temperature and radiation of the lunar surface.
Well, what about in like places like Arizona or in like the deserts of India, or the, like moon soil is not good at connecting heat? True, but if it's good at insulating heat, that's great. Like for really warm areas like Texas.
This is great news for our prospective moon base, but we are still missing the most important element, water. Now, to
No, I
better
got
their
you, brother.
odds of finding water on the moon,
Miss
India's
Click.
Vikram lander deployed a small rover named Pragyan. This was remote controlled by scientists on Earth who used 2 cameras mounted on the front
That's
of
insane.
the rover to navigate
Got little
the rough
eyes.
terrain and examine a variety of samples while traveling about 100 meters from the landing site. The rover used 2 instruments to figure out what was inside the regolith.
What?
One is an alpha wave spectrometer, which basically fires radiation
Can't I find this in Arc Raiders?
in the ground and then measures how the alpha waves bounce back into the instrument. The second is a laser-induced breakdown spectrometer, which blasts the regolith with a laser and then measures the light emitted by the blast.
Science is cool.
Both of these combined give Indian scientists a very thorough look at all of the different molecules and elements driven over by Pragyan, and they find some really cool stuff. The regolith contains metals like aluminum, calcium, chromium, and titanium. It also found oxygen, which is a really good sign, and unexpectedly, the rover detected a large amount of sulfur. The presence of sulfur provides a glimpse into the ancient history of the moon and its formation into a solid body. You see, sulfur is associated with volcanic activity, and we would expect to find that in the darker regions of the moon that we recognize as ancient lava fields. But finding it here in the light-colored highlands of the South Pole helps to support the idea
A small nuclear reactor is the way to go for a moon habitat. I agree. I think nuclear energy is the future.
that at one time, the entire surface of the moon was molten rock, with the leading theory being that the moon was created when a rogue planet named Theia crashed into the Earth over 4 billion years ago and released a big blob of molten rock and metal into space that eventually
Turned
became
into
our
the moon. But metal. So like,
India
are we going to mine the moon for its resources, like its natural resources?
some pretty cool stuff out there on the lunar South Pole, but the one thing they were not able to detect was any amount of hydrogen, which means that there couldn't be any
espresso?
H2O, no water. But what does that mean?
Yeah.
If we go back to our global mineral
The darker side of the moon is not actually dark. I know that because it's not getting a reflection from the sun.
map created by the M3 instrument and look at those blue polar regions, the hope was that there would be water everywhere, just like the map showed. But
But there's
India's
not.
rover investigation proves that this is not the case. And just to back up that finding, when China sent their Chang'e 6 probe to the South Pole of the moon in 2024 and actually returned a sample to the Earth for further study, there was no water found in that soil either. Now, that doesn't mean there's no water on the moon, it just tells us that we'll have to work harder to find it. This means going down into the bottoms of ancient craters on the lunar surface.
That's so
Because
cool.
the sunlight only ever hits the South Pole at a low angle, these craters remain in permanent shadow, which means that water ice would have been able to collect in these low-lying areas for billions of years without ever being exposed to heat.
Do you think about some of the
This is
germs and the
promising,
bacteria
but
in there?
Also problematic. With this extreme cold environment reaching down to negative 250 degrees Celsius and being totally cut off from solar power, we
Wow.
are talking about an environment that might even be too harsh for a machine to operate. This is why NASA
That's
developed
crazy.
an instrument known as ShadowCam. It was launched on board a South Korean moon orbiter called Danuri, and it uses an ultra-high sensitivity digital camera to see inside these permanently shadowed craters on the lunar surface. The hope was that with the veil of shadow lifted, we would find something like crystals of ice lining the bottom of these craters. But that was not the case. This is the bottom of the Hermite crater as captured by ShadowCam. It's one of the coldest locations on the moon, and it is a really cool sight to see, but it also looks pretty much the same as any other place on the moon.
You think Elon will
No
have his
hidden
grave on the moon
secrets
or the
or
Mars?
precious resources
I can
to
see
be
that.
found. Now again, that doesn't mean there's no water on the moon, but it
Spudus
does
crater.
give us some pretty clear proof that water will not be an easy thing for future moon colonists to obtain. We
No, you're
will
gonna
have
have to
to
mine
go
it and
digging
extract
for it
it,
in the
yeah.
darkest, coldest depths of the solar system. Not to be a buzzkill or anything. I mean, no one ever said that this was going to be easy. The more we learn, the more we understand the true scope of building a habitat for humans in a place where we were never meant to live. Nature already provided us with a pretty sweet home here on Earth, but it also instilled in humanity an unquenchable thirst for adventure and exploration. We've always found a way to reach the impossible places before, and we are going to keep doing that in space.
Space is the new frontier, but so is underwater, right? Correction, India discovered water on the moon by the Moon Impact Probe, MIP, first, then NASA's N3. Wow, there's so much racism for India, but India was different what I felt in India. There are a lot of unemployed people that are jealous. I'm not jealous. Fucking bots in the comment section. I haven't seen anything bad yet. Hold on, let's like scroll down. Let's see. Thanks, India. Shout out. The comment section tells how much the world understands India. You guys say that, but all I'm seeing is India absolutely killed it. Temperature dropped 10 centimeters is a total game changer for lunar base in India. Absolutely killing it. The temperature drop. Oh, he's just repeating himself. Dumb people don't even know what aerodynamics is, making fun of Indian Space Agency. Yeah, no, I think this shout out to India. I think India did great. Like, cool. Winning. I don't care who. Honestly, it could have been the Russians that found this shit out. I don't care. I find this shit fascinating. I really don't care who found out. I just think this is cool.